The first lie I caught was small. So small that if I had been a little busier, a little more in love, a little less attentive, I probably would have missed it. Diego told me he had gone to the dentist on a Wednesday afternoon. Later that evening, I made a casual comment about the street where his dentist's office was located. I knew that street pretty well, so I mentioned something about it being a one-way street. Diego immediately agreed with me. The only problem? The street wasn't one way. It never had been. It was a two-way street. A tiny mistake. Something anyone could get wrong. Except that if he had actually gone to the dentist, he would have known. I didn't say anything in that moment. I just nodded and changed the subject. But later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I checked. And when I confirmed the street was two-way, one question started echoing in my mind. If he lied about something that small, what else was he lying about? That question kept me awake most of the night. And eventually, it turned into a 6-month project. Tonight, I'm going to tell you about those 6 months. What I discovered, what I documented, and the Thursday night when everything finally came to the surface. But first, you need to understand something. You need to understand the kind of person who would spend 6 months quietly investigating the life of someone she claimed to love. Because that's a fair question. It's one I asked myself many times. I'm a systems analyst. My job is literally to find inconsistencies. 8 hours a day, I analyze data flows, reports, and system behavior looking for things that don't add up. A number that doesn't match. A transaction that shouldn't exist. A process that breaks somewhere in the chain. Most of the time, those inconsistencies are tiny. But tiny inconsistencies often reveal much bigger problems. When I started looking at Diego's life with the same analytical mindset I used at work, I was shocked by how many inconsistencies appeared. And interestingly enough, the cheating wasn't the first thing I discovered. It was the third. The first problem I uncovered was financial. 8 months earlier, Diego had told me he'd received a promotion at work. We were living together at the time and shared a joint account for apartment expenses, rent, utilities, groceries, things like that. If someone gets promoted, their salary usually changes. But Diego's monthly transfer to the shared account had stayed exactly the same. For 8 months. No increase, no adjustment, nothing. At first, I assumed the promotion simply wasn't a big one. But something about it bothered me. So I did a little quiet research. Nothing invasive. Just casual conversations, a bit of online digging, a few professional connections. And eventually I confirmed something very simple. The promotion never happened. He had never been promoted at all. The second inconsistency was about his family. Diego had always told me that his father had passed away years ago, and that his mother lived in a small town in the countryside. It was one of those background details you accept without questioning. Then, one evening, at a work event of his, I met one of his co-workers. During casual conversation, the co-worker asked me, "So how's Diego's dad doing?" For a moment, I thought I had misheard. But he continued talking as if this was completely normal. Apparently, Diego's father was very much alive and living in São Paulo. I smiled politely, said he was doing well, and mentally filed the information away. At that point, I had already learned something important. I wasn't just dating someone who lied occasionally. I was dating someone who constructed alternate versions of reality. The cheating came third. Strangely enough, it didn't shock me as much as it probably should have. Because by then, I already knew something fundamental. The man I was planning to marry was partly fiction. Still, I documented it. Screenshots, dates, locations, patterns. Her name was Isabella, and as far as I could tell, she didn't know about me either. Which meant she was being lied to just as much as I was. I want to be honest about what those 6 months felt like. They weren't heroic. They weren't empowering. Most days they were exhausting. There were nights when I wanted to confront him immediately. Just throw everything on the table and walk out. But I also understood something important. If I reacted emotionally right away, I would leave with the truth, but without clarity, without documentation, without protecting myself from whatever financial or legal complications could come later. So I stayed quiet. I kept sleeping next to him. We continued planning the wedding. We even visited 2 event venues together. Meanwhile, I kept documenting everything. Month 4 was when I finally spoke to a lawyer. I brought the material I had collected: financial inconsistencies, false statements, evidence of hidden debts, and the affair. She flipped through the documents slowly. Then she looked at me and said, "You're a systems analyst, aren't you?" I nodded. She smiled slightly. "This is the most organized dossier I've ever received from a client." By month 5, I knew everything I needed to know. What belonged to me, what belonged to him, what we owned together, what the financial consequences of canceling the wedding would be, and how to exit cleanly. Month 6 was about preparation, and at the beginning of month 7, Thursday arrived. Thursday was completely ordinary until about 7 in the evening. Diego came home excited. He told me he had just closed an important new contract at work. Another story I already knew wasn't real, but I listened. We had dinner together. He talked about plans for the future. Plans I knew would never happen. After dinner, he went to the kitchen to wash the dishes. While he was doing that, I walked into the bedroom. Inside my closet was a folder. 6 months of evidence. Organized, dated, labeled. I brought the folder to the dining table and sat down. A few minutes later, Diego came out of the kitchen drying his hands. He looked at the folder, then at me. "What's that?" he asked. I said calmly, "It's a summary of the last 6 months." "You can open it." He hesitated, but eventually he sat down and opened it. I watched him flip through the pages. Financial inconsistencies. The fake promotion, the hidden debts, his father, the messages with Isabella. Each page dated, each source documented, each lie placed exactly where it belonged. When he reached the last page, he closed the folder slowly. Then he looked at me. "You kept all of this?" I nodded. 6 months, I said. Everything documented. There was a long silence. Then I spoke again. "I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow morning, I want you gone. The apartment keys can stay on the table." I didn't wait for a response. I simply stood up and went to the guest room. When I woke up the next morning, the keys were on the table. Diego was gone. No scene, no shouting, no dramatic apology. And honestly, I think he understood. He knew that I didn't just suspect. I knew. In the days that followed, the calls started. Messages, explanations, excuses. My lawyer advised me not to respond to anything without consulting her first. So I didn't. 2 months later, the legal process regarding his undisclosed debts began. It's still ongoing. The wedding was canceled with less financial loss than I had expected. Some vendors were understanding, others weren't. Isabella eventually sent me a message. She apologized. I told her she had been lied to as well, and that none of this had anything to do with her. She replied, "Thank you. Good luck." I said the same, and that was the end of it. Sometimes people ask me if I regret waiting 6 months instead of confronting him immediately. My answer is no. Not because waiting is always the right decision, but because it was the right decision for me. Confronting him that first night would have been dramatic, maybe even satisfying, but I would have left without clarity, without protection, without understanding the full extent of the situation. Waiting gave me something else. It gave me control. And the most important thing those 6 months taught me wasn't about Diego. It was about me. I learned that I can stay calm under pressure, that I can separate what I feel from what I need to do, that I can plan carefully when something truly matters. Those qualities didn't disappear when the relationship ended. They stayed with me. And the version of me that walked out of that situation with a folder in her hands and a clear mind, that's the version of me that will be present in everything I build next. And honestly, that might be the most valuable thing I gained from the entire experience.